Hello, I'm Ashley from Through the Loop Yarn Craft, and I am very excited today to share with you the Analeigh Shawl. This shawl is designed to be made with just one cake of Lion Brand mandala yarn, and this pattern kicks off the blog hop that I'm hosting over on the Through the Loop Yarn Craft blog for the entire month of February. Each day features a new design that can be made with one skein, hank, or cake of yarn. I will link to the blog hop below so that you can go ahead and check that out. The Analeigh Shawl uses all double crochet and variations of double crochet stitch, making it quite easy, and it works up quickly. You can make it smaller or keep on with the repeats to make it as large as you'd like, and it's really easy to adjust the size for whatever look you're going for. I'm using the 5.5 millimeter crochet hook as well. While you're here, please hit that subscribe and like button to let me know that you're enjoying the videos, and you'll always be reminded when I post new videos and tutorials. So let's grab our supplies and make the Analeigh Shawl. All right, so let's get started. Now I have used the cake of the mandala yarn. However, if you don't have that, any 3-weight yarn will work. In fact, you can likely use a worsted weight as well. It's just going to come out a little bit bigger than my original dimensions, which is totally fine because, again, this is a very easy one to change up the size for bigger or smaller, and using a worsted weight will just make it a bit bigger. For the tutorial, we're going to go through the first 13 rows, and after that, it's just repeating the rows. And I will post as well rows after the 13th row. I will show you as well each row and what repeat it should be. So this one we're starting at the top center and working out for a triangle shape. So we're going to begin with a magic circle. Alternatively, you can do a chain 2 or 3 and crochet into that chain after you slip stitch them together. So we're going to chain 1 after we have our magic circle. And for row 1, we're just going to do 3 double crochets into our magic circle. One, 2, and 3. Now we're going to chain 2 and do 3 more double crochets into the magic circle. And 3. And now we will pull our tail tight. And we've got our little beginning triangle. So moving on to row 2, we're just going to chain 1, and each of our rows are going to start with a chain 1, and that does not count as a stitch in any row moving forward. And then we're just going to chain 1 and turn, and we're ready for row 2. So row 2, we're going to begin with 2 double crochets in this very first stitch right here. And 2. And then we're going to double crochet in the next 2 stitches. And now we're at this chain space, and this is the center corner of our shawl, which will go right down the middle of the back of the shawl. And every time we get to this spot, we're going to do 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets into the chain space. And that will be the same throughout the entire pattern. There's 2. Now we'll chain 2 and 2 more right into that chain space. And now we will just continue down the other side. So again, it's going to be the same as what we did just in reverse. So double crochet into the next 2 stitches, and then 2 double crochet in the very last stitch. The first and last stitch of every row will start and end with 2 double crochet. And there we go. We have finished row 2. And we will chain 1 and move to row 3. So row 3 is just a repeat of row 2. We're just going to end up with more stitches because every row now is going to grow a bit, but otherwise it's exactly the same. So we're going to do 2 double crochet in the first stitch, and then we're going to do a double crochet in each stitch until we get to the chain space again. So for this one, that's 1, 2, 3, And now we're at the last stitch, so we 2 double crochet into the last stitch. Great. So at the end of row 4, you should have, for a total going all the way across around here, a total of 24 double crochets. And just quick to recap, since I forgot to say it previously, row 3, you would have a total of 18. Row 2 was a total of 12, and row 1 would have been 6. So by the time you're done row 4, you want to make sure you have 24 double crochets there. So now we're moving on to row 5, and again we're just going to chain 1 and turn. And row 5 is going to be a little bit different. It's not just the double crochets across anymore. However, we are starting again with the 2 double crochet in the first stitch. We've got our first 2, and now we're going to chain 1. We're going to skip this next stitch and double crochet into the next one. And then we're going to chain 1, skip the next stitch, double crochet into the next. And we're going to repeat that all the way down until we reach that corner chain space again. Chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet. So now that we are at the end, we're going to skip that stitch there, and we're going to do our 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet into the corner chain space. So we're done that corner chain space there. We're going to chain 1. We're going to skip this first stitch, just like we did on the other side, and double crochet into the next. And then chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet into the next. And we'll repeat that all the way until the last stitch again. And then at the end, we'll skip that stitch and then 2 double crochet into the last stitch. And there we are done row 5. And at the end of row 5, you'll have 18 double crochets total for round 5. Now we will chain 1 and move on to row 6. So row 6, we're just going to start by the chain 1 and turn. This is where we're going to use the forked double crochet cluster. It's really easy, and it's a fun one to do. These rows will go really quickly for you, especially as we get bigger. So let's go through that. We're going to 2 double crochet in the first stitch as usual. And we're going to chain 1 again. And now we're going to do the forked double crochet cluster over the next 2 chain spaces. So we're not going to work into the stitches, but we're going to insert our hook into the 2 chain spaces. So to do this, we're going to yarn over, insert our hook into the chain space, pull up a loop, pull through 2 loops, so almost like a double crochet. Then we're going to stop there, yarn over, insert our hook into the next chain space, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and we'll have 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops. And there's our cluster. This is like doing 2 double crochet together. We're just separating them in different chain spaces. Then we're going to chain 1. Now to start the next cluster, we're going to yarn over, and we're going to use the same chain space we just finished and then the next one. So we're going to insert our hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through 2, 3 loops left, yarn over, pull through all 3. And there you can see we have our 2 clusters, and each of these clusters count as 1 stitch. So we count our first 2 double crochets, and then this is the 3rd stitch, the 4th stitch. Don't count these as separate. So 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches is all we have in this row so far. So and now we're going to continue that stitch down until the chain space. So we'll chain 1 and always start in the same chain space you just used. So here we are at the end with no more chain spaces until the corner one. So to do this last cluster here, we're going to yarn over, insert into that last chain space, yarn over, pull through 2, and then we're going to yarn over. You're going to skip this stitch here and crochet into the 2nd. So there's 2 stitches before our chain space. So we're going to skip the first and then use this last stitch as the 2nd part of our cluster. There we go. So now we are at the corner space, and you want to make sure you get your chain 1 after that last cluster. And now we will work our corner stitch. 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet. So working back down the other side now, after we've finished our corner stitches here, chain 1, and we're gonna start our first cluster with the first stitch here. We're gonna skip the 2nd one and use this chain space for the 2nd half. So yarn over into that first stitch, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over into the next chain space, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 3, chain 1, and there we go. And now we will continue the forked double crochet cluster all the way across again to the last of this row. So now we've used our last chain space here. We're going to, don't forget to chain one after that cluster. Now we're going to skip this stitch here and just do the 2 double crochets in the last stitch to end the row. And that is row 6. And that one is a fun one to do. We will be repeating row 6 a lot throughout the pattern. Make sure you always start the next cluster in the same one you just finished. That's a very important part. Now at the end of row 6, you'll have 20 stitches total, remembering that each cluster only counts as 1. So now we are ready for row 7, chain 1 and turn. Now row 7 is going to be similar to row 5. We're just going to be working in the tops of the clusters. So again, we'll start with our 2 double crochet. And then we will chain 1. So this time we're going to work our double crochet into the top of the cluster stitch here. So we're going to go right into the top of that here, those 2 loops, right into the top of the cluster. And whenever you work in the top of a cluster, you want to make sure it's those 2 loops there. So now we've got 2 double crochet, chain 1, and now we're going to work a double crochet into the top of the cluster and chain 1. And we're just going to repeat that all the way across. Double crochet into the top of the cluster, chain 1. Now we finished double crocheting in the top of the last cluster there, and we're at the 2 stitches before the chain space. This time we're going to double crochet into that first stitch. Chain 1 and then work our corner stitch here. Okay, so we've done that corner stitch. Now we're going to chain 1 again, and then we're going to skip this first stitch and double crochet into that second stitch. And chain 1, and again working in the tops of all the clusters. Double crochet, chain 1, and then double crochet on the cluster. One, skip that next stitch, and 2 double crochet in the last stitch. and that is row 7. And at the end of row 7, you will have a total of 22 double crochets. So moving on to row 8, chain 1 and turn. And we are ready for row 8. So row 8 again, this is going to be another cluster row. So we're going to begin with 2 double crochet into the first stitch. And chain 1. So row 8 is just a repeat of row 6. We're just going to end up with more stitches because our sides have grown. So we're going to yarn over, insert into the next chain space, through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and pull through all 3, chain 1. So we'll just do that all the way across till the end of, till we get to the corner space again. So here we are, we've used the last chain space. And just like row 6, we're going to use this chain space for the final cluster before the corner and the second stitch. So skip that stitch and using this last one here right before the corner. And chain 1. And now we work our corner. Two double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet right into that chain space. Chain 1. Now working down the other side, our first cluster will start in this first stitch here right after the chain space. And the second half of that cluster will use the space right next to there. Yarn over, chain 1, and then we can continue with the cluster stitch all the way across. And we've done our last cluster here. So chain 1, skip the next stitch, and then 2 double crochet in the last stitch. And that completes row 8. And row 8 will end with a total of 24 stitches, remembering that these clusters count as 1. So as you can kind of tell here, we did 4 rows of just double crochet, 1 row of the double crochet skip stitch, 1 row of the double crochet cluster stitch, another row of the double crochet skip, and then the double crochet cluster. So they kind of work in groups like that. So for row 9, we're going to go to the just double crochets. So it'll be always 4 rows of double crochets, then our 4 block of pretty stitches, 4 blocks of double crochets, a block of 4 rows of the pretty stitches. So that's kind of the pattern of how it will go. So let's move on to row 9, which will be just the double crochet stitches. So here we are at ready for row 9, and of course we start with our 2 double crochet into the first stitch, and now we are going to fill in all these gaps so we can go back to just our double crochet rows like row 2. So we've got 2 double crochet in the first stitch. Now we're going to double crochet into this next stitch, and then we will double crochet into the chain space, and then double crochet on top of the cluster, and then double crochet into the chain space, and double crochet on the cluster. So we're just going to double crochet in each chain space and cluster across. So here we're at the end with last 2 stitches before the corner chain space, and we're just going to double crochet right into those 2 stitches. And then we will do our corner chain space, 2 double crochet, chain 2, and 2 double crochet. And then working back down along the opposite side, we're going to double crochet in those first 2 stitches, and then double crochet in that space, and double crochet onto the cluster. And again, repeating that right to the end of this row with 2 double crochet in the very last stitch. Double crochet into that last space and the next stitch, and 2 double crochet into the last stitch. Great. There's row 9, and with row 9 you should end with 48 stitches total. So as I mentioned before, we were just getting into the double crochet rows. So row 10, we're just going to do 2 double crochet in the first stitch, double crochet in each stitch, corner space stitches, double crochet all the way down the other side, and then 2 in the last stitch. So row 10, 11, and 12 are all just repeats of row 2. We're going to go with row 10 here will be 2 double crochet in the first stitch, and then double crochet in each stitch. Crochets until the chain space. Then we're going to do our corner stitch, 2, chain 2, and then a double crochet in each stitch going back down the other. And finishing up row 10, of course, with 2 double crochet in that last stitch. Row 10, you will finish with 54 double crochets. And now we will do the same thing for row 11 and 12. Row 11 will end with 60 stitches. Row 12 will end with 66 stitches. So finish up row 11 and 12, and I'll meet you right back here. All right, so I am done up to row 12. So again, we have 4 rows of just the double crochets. And quickly go over, row 10 had 54 stitches, row 11 60 stitches, and row 12 had 66 stitches. So now we are ready for row 13. So for row 13, we're going back to the double crochet skip 1. So we're going to again start with 2 double crochet in the first stitch, chain 1, skip 1 stitch, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, chain 1. And we will repeat that all the way down to the chain space for the corner. Okay, so now that we've reached the end near the corner chain 2 space, we have 2 stitches left before the space. So after our last double crochet chain 1, we're going to skip this next stitch and double crochet into the one right before the chain space. And then chain 1, and then our corner chain space. Chain 2, and 2 double crochet. chain 1, and then we're going to make our first stitch in the first stitch right after the corner chain space. Chain 1, skip a stitch, and continue on the same way. End of the row, we have 2 stitches left, and so we skip 1, double crochet 2 into the last stitch. There we go. So moving forward now, we're going to continue repeating all the rows we've already done, and each row will just have a higher stitch count. So here is the stitch count chart I have made. So this shows you each row, what it's a repeat of, and how many stitches it should have. If you'd like, you can also find a copy of this chart on the blog post for the shawl, and you can find that there as well. So you will just continue on with these repeats and stitch counts. I did a total of 38 rows. However, you can do as many as you'd like. You would just keep repeating the same sequences. And keep in mind, going forward, you'll have always 4 rows of just double crochets and then alternating rows of the double crochet skip, then the cluster, then the double crochet skip, and then the cluster. They're in blocks of 4 is how I like to remember it. So just go ahead and continue on until you have completed your desired size. Well, there we have it, your completed shawl. The end of it should look something like this, or you can even add another cake of mandala yarn to get a really nice big shawl. Absolutely, you can do that as well. And again, you can head over to the blog to find a copy of the stitch pattern there as well, and I've linked to that below. Thank you so much for joining me today to make the Analeigh shawl. I hope you are loving this one as much as I do. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button below. Don't forget to go over and check out the blog hop through the month of February 2022. There will be lots of fun One Skein patterns available. Thanks again, and I will see you next time.